On this Wednesday night, Hockey Quebec powers forward without Hockey Canada. The ripple effects of severing ties with the national governing body and the amplifying calls for accountability.
Why for 4 years did this feminist government, or I should say so-called feminist government, do absolutely nothing?
Ukrainian troops reclaim more regions from Russia. As the Kremlin claims it will retake what's been lost. Democracy and the deniers. Claims of a stolen U.S. election blanket the November midterm elections. And historic home run.
He has done it!
A baseball player who slugged a 6-decade-old record.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The pressure is mounting on the senior leadership at Hockey Canada after a combative day being grilled by MPs in Ottawa and refusing to make any changes. There are signs the organization is beginning to crumble. Hockey Quebec is turning its back on the national governing body, and both the federal sports minister and the prime minister say it's time for the organization to clean house.
It boggles the mind that Hockey Canada is continuing to dig in its heels. Parents across the country are losing faith or have lost faith in Hockey Canada. Certainly, politicians here in Ottawa have lost faith in Hockey Canada. It's no surprise that provincial organizations are questioning whether or not they want to continue supporting an organization that doesn't understand how serious a situation it has contributed to causing.
The lack of faith is spreading. Late today, confirmation from Tim Hortons, one of the organization's biggest sponsors. It will pull sponsorship of all of the men's hockey programs from the upcoming season. All of this stems from Hockey Canada's handling of alleged sexual assaults and the way money was paid out in lawsuits. But now it goes even deeper into the culture and leadership of the entire organization. Mike Armstrong has our top story tonight.
The fallout from Hockey Canada's various scandals is having an impact, it would appear, at many levels.
Just tear it down and start all over.
From parents in parking lots to politicians in Parliament.
I think we need meaningful change at the top of Hockey Canada.
Tuesday's appearance by Hockey Canada's new interim chair has gone over a little like a lead balloon. Andrea Skinner was criticized for resistance to change, and there's also some frustration over one line in particular. She questioned whether hockey in Canada could survive without Hockey Canada and its leadership team.
Will the lights stay on the rink? I don't know. We can't predict that, and to me, that's not a risk worth taking.
Well, the hearing appears to have been that one last straw for Hockey Quebec. Just hours later, the organization's board voted on a resolution stating it has lost confidence in the National Federation and is withholding the funds it normally gives to Hockey Canada. That's a $3 fee collected for every member at every age. Hockey Quebec's president says he's going to be keeping the money in a trust and will wait to see if change comes. But basically, Claude Fortin says he's tired of hearing complaints. He says it's not fun. He was at a tournament over the weekend and almost everyone who walked up to him talked about Hockey Canada. Now, other provincial organizations are weighing the same move, and there is pressure. The federal sports minister says Hockey Canada doesn't belong to its board, it belongs to its members. Those members, she says, should be insisting on change.
Since the leaders of Hockey Canada are holding on to their jobs, the voting members need to clean the house.
Now, there's no date yet, but the Heritage Committee does know who it wants to hear from next, Bob Nicholson. Now with the Edmonton Oilers, for more than 15 years, he was the president and CEO of Hockey Canada. He's been sent a subpoena to force him to appear.
No, it's not normal.
That's something the committee doesn't usually do, but members say they made the move faced with an unwillingness by Hockey Canada to answer questions otherwise. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Hockey Canada had its federal funding frozen in June after the scandal about multi-million-dollar payouts to settle sexual assault lawsuits. It received roughly $7.8 million, or 6% of its annual budget from the federal government. Within our hockey-crazed nation, Hockey Canada, a nonprofit organization, sits at the top. It's the governing body of 13 member branches in every corner of the country. These entities, like Hockey Quebec, manage amateur hockey at the provincial, regional, and territorial level. Hockey Canada also partners with 12 affiliate organizations like the CHL, the NHL, and the International Ice Hockey Federation in what they call an effort to grow the game. In its latest annual report, the organization said it had more than 385,000 players registered under its umbrella. That number is said to be lower than usual because of the pandemic. Now to Russia's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin vows it will retake any territory it has lost to advancing Ukrainian forces and says it intends to declare the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant Russian property. A fresh wave of Russian conscripts is being sent to the front, but as Crystal Goomansingh reports, Ukrainian forces are still making fast and strong gains where it counts.
With rubble still smoldering, air raid sirens wail, warning of more attacks Wednesday. This 80-year-old who lives across the street from the strike heard a roaring, piercing sound, then another roar, followed by a boom. It's been weeks since the area around the Ukrainian capital was hit. The governor of Kyiv Oblast posted on Telegram that so-called kamikaze drones were used. 6 strikes injuring 1 person and damaging infrastructure. Contact. Possibly a sign of Russian frustration. Ukraine is challenging Russia and breaking through its front lines in the east and the south, reclaiming territory at a rapid pace. Russia, however, continues to claim it is seeing battlefield successes and is now laying claim to Europe's largest nuclear plant. Vladimir Putin declared it would be supervised by Russia since it's located in a region recently annexed, albeit illegally, by the Kremlin. Putin did walk back on a decree outlining who must participate in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Putin announced deferred conscription for some, such as students attending private accredited universities. It comes as tens of thousands of men of fighting age have been fleeing to neighboring countries, including Georgia, after a mobilization order was issued September 21st. With the war entering its 8th month, life in Ukraine is unrecognizable. Even in reclaimed regions, there is still suffering. 10-year-old Ludmila Sorodnik describes where the furniture used to be in his family's home in a village in the Donetsk Oblast. Fighting back tears, he says, now it's almost no home. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
A former Russian journalist, famous for staging an on-air protest against Putin's invasion of Ukraine, says she's escaped house arrest. Marina Osvanyakova says she decided to escape house arrest because she's innocent. She says Putin should be wearing an ankle monitor, not her. She was given 2 months house arrest for standing up and calling the Russian president a murderer. She also faces charges of spreading fake news. She failed to turn up at her hearing today. Russia has now declared her a fugitive. In March, Osvanyakova stormed the set of one of Russia's most popular news programs with a poster reading, "Stop the War." U.S. President Joe Biden visited hurricane-ravaged Florida and promised more federal aid for the huge rebuilding effort.
Everything is historic, titanic, and unimaginable storm just ripped it to pieces. And it's going to take a lot of time, not weeks or months. It's going to take years for everything to get squared away.
Biden was joined by Governor Ron DeSantis, a frequent critic of his and potential Republican presidential candidate. They met with residents and small business owners in Fort Myers. The death toll in Florida has risen to at least 110, and rescue crews are still searching flooded neighborhoods. The damage is estimated to top $100 billion. It's already been almost 2 years since Biden was elected, and that means the U.S. midterms are approaching. It will be a big test of his leadership, and Republicans are hoping the November 8th vote will change the game for them. Lots of Americans continue to believe the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. 60% of voters live in districts where so-called election deniers are actually on the ballot. Our Jackson Proskow is in Pennsylvania tonight looking at the implications of the big election lie.
In the birthplace of American democracy, Donald Trump's election lies are on the ballot. Here, Republican candidates for every level of office question the legitimacy of the 2020 election.
Election denialism is very strong in Pennsylvania and across the country.
Our electoral process is being challenged.
Shemaine Daniels is the Democratic candidate in Pennsylvania's 10th district. Her opponent is incumbent Republican Congressman Scott Perry, a central figure in Trump's plot to overturn the election on January 6th. Perry's phone was recently seized by the FBI.
They denied the results of the Biden election. They don't deny the results of their own elections. Their election denial is very specific.
If we can't trust the vote, there really are no winners.
Republican strategist Charlie Giro insists there's nothing wrong with candidates questioning election integrity. He claims the party has moved on from Trump's big lie.
Most voters are not focused on what may or may not have happened on January 6th. They're looking forward.
But listen to Doug Mastriano, the Republican candidate for Pennsylvania governor.
Our election was compromised.
Mastriano was in the crowd at the Capitol on January 6th and is still pushing conspiracy theories and lies about 2020. Revenge is part of his platform.
As your governor, I get to appoint the Secretary of State, and guess who oversees elections? I do, through the Secretary of State.
It's not just Pennsylvania. So-called election deniers are on the ballot in a majority of the states, including dozens of candidates for statewide jobs like governor and attorney general, positions with oversight of how elections are conducted.
We're going to take a sledgehammer to these damn electronic voting machines.
In Arizona, Republican gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake is a full-blown denier. In Michigan, conspiracy theorist Christina Caramo is the Republican nominee for Secretary of State.
Let's make Michigan's elections honest again.
It's all a sign of Donald Trump's continued grip on the Republican Party, making November a stress test for how free and fair the 2024 presidential election will be.
Where there's a debate about whether elections are stolen or not, that is no benefit to either party, in my opinion, in the long run.
There's little debate this is a precarious moment for American democracy when one of only two parties on the ballot is so deeply committed to claiming that elections cannot be trusted. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Philadelphia.
British Prime Minister Liz Truss tried to salvage her reputation at the Conservative Party conference today, facing dire opinion polls after her wildly unpopular economic agenda. Truss gave a speech promising growth and said her tough approach will pay off.
This mission will be difficult, but it is necessary. We have no alternative if we want to get our economy moving again. I'm ready to make the hard choices.
Her speech was interrupted by protesters waving a banner that said, "Who voted for this?" Truss has been on the defensive since her first days in office and has backtracked on an unpopular tax cut for the rich. Believe it or not, Thanksgiving's just around the corner. Coming up, why it won't be a feast with all the trimmings for some Canadians. It's a grim reality in the world right now. Income inequality, inflation, and interest rates are all rising. As Canadians plan Thanksgiving dinner, some will be adjusting what's on the menu. Anne Gaviola explains.
Your plans for turkey with all the fixings may need a rethink. All the classics will cost noticeably more this year, from pumpkin pie to potatoes and cranberries.
Dairy, produce, meat, and baked goods are high up on the list.
Nearly a quarter of Canadians say they're making changes to the menu this Thanksgiving because of food inflation. This is happening most in lower-income households, with nearly a third cutting back, and most common in BC at 29%, Alberta 25%. There are a lot of reasons for the jump in cost. Inflated gas prices that feed through to everything we get trucked or shipped in, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Europe's breadbasket, along with climate impacts to agriculture on a world scale.
The war in Ukraine is disrupting wheat and seed oil markets. And then there's been a drought in many different parts of the world, in the US, California in particular, and that's reducing supplies of fresh produce.
Drought conditions in California hit us in the pocketbook hard because we import a lot of fresh foods grown there. Throw in a global labor shortage and prices are steeper for anything that needs to be processed. The list goes on. Poultry producers are dealing with a spike in avian flu outbreaks, hitting farmers in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
The avian flu is a bird virus, and
affects the bird populations. Health Canada assures us that it's not a food safety issue.
Though bird flu is not transmissible to humans, it means less supply and extra effort may be needed to find that fresh bird.
You may have to go to another store to find one. The fresh supply may be challenging at times, depending on which store you're going to or localized suppliers.
To keep a lid on costs, you can buy local, choose canned or frozen fruits and vegetables, and reduce the amount of meat you purchase. Maybe choosing a smaller, frozen bird is in the cards for you and yours this year, while bumping up those side dishes. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
The gig is up. Ahead, Jason Kenney's legacy as Alberta's premier. In just over 24 hours, Alberta will have a new premier. Jason Kenney is leaving, forced out by the United Conservative Party he formed. Kenney had a long run in federal politics before he was elected premier, but his popularity quickly waned. As Heather Urix West explains, the 54-year-old says he is leaving political life with no regrets.
It's been the privilege of a lifetime to be able to serve Calgarians and Albertans.
With his time as the Premier of Alberta coming to an end, Jason Kenney is looking back over a political career that spanned more than 25 years.
To be styled Minister of Employment and Social Development.
First elected to the federal House of Commons at age 29, he quickly rose through the ranks to hold several key positions within Prime Minister Stephen Harper's cabinet.
Just incredibly energetic, articulate, and ambitious. I mean, he always has been somebody that just wanted to get things done. And, he wasn't prepared to go along with the status quo.
But in 2016, after the defeat of the Harper government, Jason Kenney set his sights on Alberta politics, working to unite the province's two right-wing political parties and eventually winning the leadership of the new United Conservative Party. Kenney's UCP government cruised to an easy majority, but his honeymoon was short-lived. His popularity was already beginning to wane when the world was hit with COVID-19.
It was his handling of COVID, very, very significant questions about the wisdom of some of the policies, promising the best summer ever and then going on vacation at a time that Alberta was struggling with the highest case numbers.
Facing a polarized electorate and party members who felt betrayed, Jason Kenney's support entered a free fall.
I had a perhaps naive approach to caucus relations.
And that is perhaps the closest thing Jason Kenney has to regret. During COVID, Kenney frequently pivoted between speaking for and against public health measures.
I wonder if perhaps we owed Albertans a greater degree of discipline and coherence.
Thank you for coming.
A rare admission from a leader who didn't often back down as he looks towards a new chapter outside political life. Heather Urix West, Global News, Calgary.
A settlement has been reached in the lawsuit between Alec Baldwin and the family of Helena Hutchins. She was killed last year by a prop gun fired by Baldwin while filming the movie Rust. The suit alleged there were safety violations on the set. Production of Rust is expected to begin again in January. Baldwin and 4 others could still face criminal charges over her death. A home run for the history books next. The New York Yankee who just became baseball's latest legend. Sports history has been made in Arlington, Texas. New York Yankees slugger Aaron Judge knocked his 62nd home run this season out of the park, smashing a decades-old record for most home runs in a single American League season. It is an achievement that has cemented Judge's name as one of baseball's all-time greats. Eric Sorensen has more.
All eyes in baseball have been following Aaron Judge for months. A week ago, Canadian fans were there to witness history. Judge's 61st home run equaled a record that stood for 6 decades, but it was a mere prelude to this, the greatest home run season in the 122-year history of the American League. Judge is a giant on the field at 6'7", but his humility is just as impressive as he took in his biggest moment in the sport.
I just thinking of my wife, thinking of my family,
my teammates, just the fans.
Judge may have been subdued, but watch the Yankees radio announcer.
Swung on. There it goes. Deep left. It is high. It is far. It is gone.
And the lucky guy who got the ball. And his teammates who erupted. And fans in Texas who were ecstatic.
I'm still on cloud nine. This is unbelievable.
Some records look unbreakable. Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak, Nolan Ryan's strikeouts, Cal Ripken's Ironman record. And then there is the single-season home run record, a most hallowed achievement. But the records were set in the era of steroid use and are not recognized as legitimate by many baseball purists. Which brings us to the Yankees and the historic home run numbers that have meant so much to baseball. 95 years ago, Babe Ruth's record, 60 home runs. 34 years later, Roger Maris's 61. For a time, baseball added a little asterisk just because the season was longer. And now, Aaron Judge. No asterisks, no whiff of scandal or drugs, 62 home runs. Making history with one game to spare. Judge has extolled the integrity of Ruth and Maris because he says they played the game the right way.
Getting a chance to have my name next to someone as great as Roger Maris, Babe Ruth, those guys is incredible.
Records have always mattered in baseball. Veteran writers have kept suspected steroid users out of the Sports Hall of Fame. Judge plays in an era with regular drug testing.
This is the greatest home run season, clean, not steroid related, in baseball history.
The fan who caught the ball hasn't said what he'll do with it. It could be worth $2 million. And Judge, a free agent this winter, will command hundreds of millions. But more important than money, for many fans, Aaron Judge has restored an unconditional joy for one of baseball's most cherished records. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is autumn setting in on Christopher Lake, Saskatchewan. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.